people coming to Georgia.gov are just showing up on a mobile device. So my main message to you guys would be that your customers aren't waiting for you to say, hey, we're mobile ready. They're just showing up on your sites with whatever device they're holding in their hand, which more frequently is going to be an iPhone or an Android device or maybe a tablet, and they're either having a good experience and they're staying, or they're having a bad experience and they're bouncing off your site. So that's kind of what we're seeing here at GTA. So for the rest of the program, Nikhil's going to kind of do a deep dive on just the mobile landscape and just talk about what does it actually mean to be mobile friendly on a website. Christina is going to talk about the specific technique of responsive design, which is the kind of the technology we've adopted here at GTA on the Drupal platform to deal with mobility. And she's going to demo what we've already done on the main site. And then Peter Lee is going to come back up and he's going to talk to you guys who are on the Georgia.gov Drupal platform about how to make your content kind of responsive ready. So with that, just want to thank you again for coming and taking time out of your day. We really do appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it back over to Nikhil.
Thanks, Steve. That down there. Can you all hear me? Fine? There? Okay. Well, good morning and welcome. Glad you all made it through the rain and all the icky weather. Happy to kick this off where I want to first talk about why I invited you over and kind of to tell you mobile is not the future. And I have some numbers, some data to back that up, where we'll just go over and see why it's not the future. So just a worldwide view on what mobile consumption is today. We're looking at, and this is the end of 2012 stats, where we have about 2.1 billion users on mobile devices accessing the web. That's about like 29.5 world population resorting to mobile devices for their web consumption. Back home here, it's 31% of the US population and 51% low-income users resorting to mobile as their primary source of web consumption. So these numbers are staggering. They absolutely kind of make the case that mobile is really not anymore the future. It's kind of here. Some stats. This was research by Morgan Stanley, published back in 2012, where they rolled out a lot of data into a form of, well, they called it the Mobile Internet Report, and they had all kinds of numbers up there, like all the global GPS devices being activated, blah and blah and blah. What the trends showed here that starting off like in the 1990s, where we were looking at about 100 million or so PC users. Moving up to in the 2000s, where it was like a 1 billion population of, and these are like users connected to the internet. And they are estimating 10 billion people by 2018 to be connected. And primarily, these are going to be mobile consumers. Now, the first question that obviously kind of comes up is like, wait a minute, that's more than the world population. Yep, absolutely. So this tenfold increase in the next computing cycle, let's look at how that stacks up with the world population. So based on some of the agreed studies, there are about 370,000 babies born every day worldwide. Compared to that, there are 378,000 iPhones that are sold every day. If you also add the iPod Touches and the iPads and the rest of the family from just the iOS devices, the number goes up to 562,000 devices that are activated on a daily basis. Not to be kind of outnumbered, Larry Page in their recent Google conference announced that now they are looking at 1.3 million Android activations daily. So these numbers are just phenomenal. So who are these people, right? I mean, how many people are using these devices? So it sort of turns out that, say about 52%, more than half of the population that owns a laptop, uses a laptop as their primary computing device, also use a smartphone. 31% of the US smartphone users own a tablet. And about 13% of all Americans who own all three of these devices, that amounts to about 45.5 million people. So we're looking at an era where we just don't have any device. All right, so just to kind of go around in this room, how many of you all have more than one device that you are using? All right, more than 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh wow, 5. Okay, man. So I mean, right up here, right? I mean, we are, from a device headcount perspective, multiplying right up here, and there's a reason why we have multiple devices. It's not like we are carrying around 3 phones. No, we have different devices, and if we were talking about mobile being the future, it would have been okay if we were talking about a mobile device that looked like this. All right, this was the Motorola Razr. I had it, loved it, because this was like the first phone that had a 1.8 megapixel camera. It had like email. It could send SMS. It was like a true connected phone. But one thing I did not do on this phone was browse the web. It's not that it didn't have a browser, it did, but the experience was really bad. Half of the times I would just wait for things to load. The connection speed was bad, and I mean it was kind of like a pseudo approximation of what your regular web experience was. And the experience part of it was something that stopped us from using this phone. And back then, AT&T was the primary carrier for this phone, and the data usage that they were seeing at one point in 2007, they suddenly saw a spike where the data usage went up 5,000%. And that was the time when the iPhone was launched. Now, everyone knows, obviously, when the iPhone was launched, people were excited because not just that it was like a new kind of a phone, it was this modern incarnation of a smartphone that we were used to. It did not have the clumsy keypad where you had to share a button with 3 letters and have to memorize, and there was like a lot of room for user errors. This was like a really nice touch device. It was a portable computer, and it actually gave you what you're used to as far as your web experience is concerned, where it was exactly like what you would use on your desktop. So we actually went out of our way to learn how to use that. It was almost like us learning a new language to be able to browse the web, surf the web, just to kind of get to what we were trying to do. Now, no mobile conversation is going to be complete without the mention of this guy, Luke Perblowski. He was one of the first whistleblowers where, he's a numbers guy. And I'm actually kind of, relying on some of his numbers. And he was the first one to kind of see this trend going and saying, guys, we need to be ready for this. Looks like mobile is going to be the big thing. And he said it way back when people really weren't even thinking of mobile in mobile terms. And he was like, well, not just that the mobile now gives you an experience exactly what you're getting on the web, but mobile also comes with its own features. And that is going to let users expect more. And if we don't deliver that, we're going to miss the boat because somebody else is going to deliver it. And one of his key findings was he tracked everything, right? He tracked all the major sites and their mobile usage. And this is Facebook's usage. if we look at the top 5 websites worldwide from a monthly traffic perspective, Facebook is hit the most. At an average, a user spends 6 hours a day on Facebook. On an average. Yep. And Facebook is ramping up for that. And out of those hours, 75% of Facebook's traffic comes from mobile devices. 75%. So we're looking at this particular usage chart where we are seeing this line trend, but wait a minute, didn't Facebook announce at one point that they crossed like 1 billion users? This is a steady stream, right? And that's because these are the non-mobile users. When you look at the mobile usage, it just skyrocketed. We're looking at the third quarter from 2010 until the fourth quarter of 2012. So what Borglisky pointed was that mobile traffic is multiplying, and what he stated as where it actually crossed over, where it actually surpassed their desktop traffic, he called it the mobile moment. And this is the mobile traffic that is also using Facebook from a desktop. They also have exclusive mobile traffic that added to their numbers that put them over that billion mark. 30% of users in India use Facebook purely just on their mobile devices. And most of those numbers, the 51% of low-income users that we saw that use mobile as their primary device, yeah, they're part of this mobile-only traffic. So they have absolutely no exposure to Facebook other than a mobile device. So that's kind of what Luke was trying to get at, is keep an eye out and find where your mobile moment is. Because don't wait until it comes around. You gotta be prepared way before it's out there. So, what is mobile, right? I mean, we keep hearing about mobile, but then exactly how do we define mobile? Is it something that we can walk around and use? So what Luke did was he put a spectrum of personal computers. And we can pretty much agree on the distinction here where, all of us kind of claim to have used at least 2 of these devices at some point in our life. So at this point, the distinction was, well, maybe the screen size is what defines mobile, other than the fact that, yes, you can actually walk around with it, that you're mobile with that device, but 3 of those 4 devices actually are mobile. So looking at this, we started out by saying, well, maybe the phone to begin with is just mobile. And then the rest of it is what we are used to as a desktop web experience. And companies and organizations jumped on that by saying, well, maybe we need a website specifically for our mobile users. Okay? And then we saw a few of these popping up. m.something.com or mobile.something.com. So actually now they had 2 different web properties, one catering to their mobile users and the other one for the desktop users. But the mobile revolution that Apple had kickstarted had not quite, it was kind of just multiplying, because right after the iPhone was launched, everybody else put their own product in the market that was kind of mimicking what Apple had put out there through their first iPhone. And not just the fact that they had something like the iPhone, the trend was that they started making larger phones now, where they kept going up. Like first it was the iPhone at kind of 4 inches, and Samsung then launched something with 4.5 inches, going up all the way with their Samsung Note 2 that was 6 inches. Not to be outdone, Sony put something out there, and then Samsung again had to come back with this Galaxy Tab 8, which is an 8-inch, what they call it now, is a phablet. A tablet that you can actually use as a phone. Hopefully with a Bluetooth device, not like this. But as far as the sales were concerned, one of the interesting number, kind of that we saw in the market was that in 2012, more than 25 million shipments were of phones that had screens of 5 inches or more. In 2013, that number jumped from 25 million to 60 million. So people clearly kind of, were making a choice where like, yeah, it's a big phone, I like it. So, having said that, certainly the phone itself cannot be the only mobile device. Now the mobile has moved from phone to the tablet. So now we have a mobile device, then we have a tablet device that could be a mobile device, and then the rest of it, which is kind of a regular web browsing experience. But again, with tablets, obviously it was the iPad that was the first tablet that was launched, but then immediately the market was flooded with the rest of them, right? Google launched their Nexus at 7 inches. So again, the phone, the biggest phone being 7 inches and the smallest tablet being 7 inches, really there is no distinction here. And then going up with that all the way to Apple's iPad, which is 9.7 inches, to Lenovo ThinkPad, which is 10.1 inches, which is just like a few, kind of half an inch short of the smallest laptop. Again, we are seeing this progression towards a screen size that we really cannot say it is just mobile. Now, obviously, the tablets have their own place. You can't really swap it for a mobile device. We can do many other things with the tablet. 30% of the times of an iPad is known to be used while someone's watching TV. Or, mostly 21% of the times iPad, that's what Apple says in most of the keynotes, is what people use in bed. Or 91% of the overall tablet traffic in 2012 has been from an iPad. So obviously we cannot discount the fact that it has a huge, huge presence up here. But then how do we plan for a mobile presence? If these boundaries are getting fuzzier and fuzzier, no longer the ergonomical aspect of these devices are key, right? We can't say just because I can hold it in my palm and walk around with it, it's mobile. Or I can put it on my lap wherever I go and sit, it's mobile. Obviously, you don't expect to move around with your desk, so at least that's like one distinction. But there are other factors where maybe we can think of something mobile that we otherwise touch and use gestures to navigate, as opposed to using a cursor and a keyboard on the non-mobile devices. Then, we got this Lenovo Yoga tab, which is a touchscreen laptop. So it has its own keyboard along with the touchscreen. So we again now don't know if this is a mobile device or if this is like a laptop that you just put on a desk and use it. Again, boundaries are getting fuzzier. Sony launched Vaio, which is a 20-inch tablet. A 20-inch tablet that you can walk around, which is pretty much comparable to any of these desktops. So from a screen size perspective, we are still looking at these boundaries getting blurred and blurred, and you can just prop it up and you can use it, you can do whatever with it. So the fact that we were just compartmentalizing some of these as far as touch and gestures or cursor keyboard, again, pretty much you can use anything for touch and gestures, and we still have some of these out in the market where we see people using these for certain websites. So yes, it's a mobile device, but it has its own keyboard, and some of them even have like a tracking pad. So again, we are looking at a spectrum where anything is used anyhow. We're using our iPads to watch TV. We're using our TVs to play games. We're using our computers, to make calls. There is really nothing that is specific to a device anymore, and it's just how the users are choosing to roll. We can control that. What we can control is how do we treat our presence. All right, so when we were looking at Georgia GovStats and looking at these users coming in from all ends, how do you plan for that? So thankfully, responsive design came to our rescue, and the next speaker, Christina Linga, she is our lead on implementing responsive design on Georgia Gov, and she's going to do an in-depth talk about responsive design. But just to kind of give you a very high-level understanding of responsive, Ethan Marcotte is the person who actually thought about responsive design. And his approach was based on this experimental trend called responsive architecture, where physical spaces respond to human presence. And it's driven by sensors, it's driven by many technological kind of devices where it senses what people are doing in a certain space, and the space accommodates accordingly. Similarly, he thought, well, maybe we could do that as far as websites are concerned. Maybe a website can adapt to the device rather than having multiple versions of websites and just kind of like relying on something to tell us what device people are using. So one of the projects that actually got implemented from an experimental stage to something that has been used around is the smart glass technology, where if a meeting room is empty, the glass is transparent and you can see there's no one in there. But once it's occupied, the same meeting room, it becomes opaque for privacy's sake. No one controls it, it's all automated. This is responsive. So taking the exact same ideology and the concept, he thought of a certain way of making the website adapt to the environment. So we don't have to have multiple versions, but at the same time, anyone using any device is satisfied by your website. But this is just a part of technology. There is another key factor that we need to be very careful about is content. This is what our experience before responsive was. A website automatically got scaled down. And that's why we had to rely on those gestures, the pinches and the zooms ins and the swipes, just to kind of get around the content that we were looking at. But implementing responsive, you can have the exact same website look in a certain way on a phone where you don't have to do multiple content entries. It's just something that happens on the back end real time. So the key here is that not only the technology needs to be in place, but your content needs to respond as well. And the content, kind of like, just to kind of throw an analogy there, where chocolate milk, who doesn't like chocolate milk? I love chocolate milk. But regardless of the container you put that in there, it still tastes yummy. And we need to make sure our content is ready for any container that it goes in, and it doesn't lose its integrity. So as far as content is concerned, Karen McGrain, who is a UX designer, content strategist, and an author, she has written multiple books about content strategy, and really forces this concept about everyone needs a content strategy. And that's something Peter is going to be talking in his session, where just having something out there is not enough. What is our strategy behind having that content out there? Since he's going to be doing a very detailed talk about that, again, I'm going to give you a very high level, as like what the content strategy really is, or what it needs to be, and just cite an example that Karen had, explained in one of her talks in the past. So she explained this concept of adaptive content, where content gets adapted. And this is back in 1980s, where we had one magazine that was so ubiquitous everywhere in almost every house. All right, and it was a magazine that was so popular, so famous, that almost everyone had it, and typically that magazine sat right next to our TV remote. And that was the TV Guide. The TV Guide was something that obviously told us what's coming next on the TV, right? Because back then, we relied on a book to tell us. And while they had a huge circulation and people were obviously choosing to buy and have this, TV Guide people realized that they were not in the magazine business. They were in the content publishing business. So what they did was they created an app. And they asked their writers to write 3 program descriptions, 3 versions of every program. One was the long form, the medium form, and the short form. And back then, they exactly weren't sure of what's going to happen, but they knew they were in the content business and they needed to make sense of the content rather than all the content sitting in a book form where all the styling's done. They understood the importance of creating the content such that if the title is separate, if the genre is separate, and it's all sitting in a database, people can look up based on what they're looking for. And they started doing that, and that really saved them because, like many things in the 80s that probably just kind of vanished in thin air, they were one of the first ones, in this industry who had a very easy transition from print into digital, where we hear about like all these newspapers going, belly up. These guys survived because back then they probably didn't even project this or expect this, but now we have the exact same TV guide in a digital form, right? Cable companies use it. We have it in our TO. We can go ahead and plan our week. We also have it on our iPad in form of an app. A lot of times, they might not be putting out those apps themselves, but they have the content such that if anyone is building an app, they can easily look up based on genres up there. So essentially what this is just an example of what they thought from a content strategy perspective. Obviously, everyone needs their own strategy based on what is it that you are doing. But this is something that they went with, is they created this structured metadata, where content was in the center, that was the core of their offerings, and it was a very clean presentation, independent content. It didn't matter. When they created that content, they were not thinking it's going to be sitting on a website or it's going to be sitting on a mobile phone, web browser. They just created content. And then it kind of, got streamed to whatever the device the users were seeking it from. So, content is a crucial part, and that's something, we had to pretty much revisit when we were redoing GOVTalks, right? So this is kind of like where it comes home, where, okay, this is awesome, but how does it affect us? So GOVTalks was the first site that we made responsive. We kind of let it stay there that way. So we fixed a lot of things as it was being used. We saw a few things, and we had to redo a lot of content for it because the content that we had either was irrelevant or maybe just not responsive friendly. Having said that, the decision to make GOVTalks responsive was not something we just kind of, decided, saying, hey, responsive looks like a trend, we should do that. No, it was driven by numbers. Because we saw that GOV had some really impressive numbers coming up here. I mean, at this point, GOV data, from a numbers perspective, it's still growing. But if you just look at some of the numbers up here, the desktop traffic, that's in the gray, that's the gray line, it's declining. It's consistently declining. This is just last year. But look at the mobile traffic. It's constantly going up, and the yellow line is our tablet traffic. We can actually now have a difference in desktop and tablet, where this is like the monthly view, and we're getting, like almost a steady decline every month in our desktop traffic. Now, there has been an increase in our traffic. There has been an increase by like 7% in our desktop traffic, but still the overall usage is declining. And it's staggering that our mobile and the tablet traffic is really kind of like growing, and every month we are almost seeing like 100% increase. So at this point, 2012 data showed us that our desktop traffic was 82%, mobile traffic was 15%, and tablet was 2%. The exact same month when we saw in 2012, our desktop traffic had reduced to 69%. But the mobile traffic and the tablet visits had doubled at like 114, 137%. It surely is an alarming number. Granted, it's not there yet, but it is an alarming number to kind of, be ready. All right. I want to throw out a question out there, and whoever can tell me, I don't know if it's the right answer, but I'm assuming you're going to be honest and you're going to be accurate, but you will win a Georgia Gov t-shirt. Who is monitoring their mobile traffic, and who can tell me what their mobile traffic was last month? Anybody? Somebody? All right, well, let me open up the question. If I were to ask you, which of the state web property has the most mobile traffic? So from the state website perspective, which of the state website has the most mobile traffic, and any guess what that traffic looks like?
Team Georgia.
Georgia.gov.
Team Georgia.
Team Georgia. Anybody else? DHS.
Trade and tourism.
Trade and tourism. So it's DHS. Any guess what part of DHS?
Compass.
You still win that t-shirt, but any guess what part of DHS?
Child support.
It's actually child support.
Oh wow.
Absolutely. It is child support. And here's what it is. In 2012, child support desktop traffic was a little under 300,000. In 2013, it actually went down to 270,000. But their mobile traffic, which was 29% in 2012, went up to 45%. And if you add the tablet traffic, which is another 4.44%, what are we seeing here? A mobile moment. Absolutely. We are seeing our own mobile moment here. And this is going to be in a few years. This is going to be exactly what we looked at Facebook today, where the mobile traffic is going to surpass the desktop traffic by massive numbers. So we got to be ready. We have to be ready to do this. I'm glad that we kind of had piloted the responsive technology in Georgia Gov because we learned our lessons, we fixed all the bugs. We're getting ready now to scale it up to the rest of the portal. Peter will be addressing this in his talk as he wraps up, but kind of start looking at your data, start looking at your content. It's never too early to kind of take some notes from what he says and start getting ready to be mobile friendly because at some point you're going to have to make sure your site is mobile friendly. We will offer you the technology, but you are still responsible for your content, and we cannot be truly mobile friendly if the content really isn't aligned with our technology. So some of the takeaways from today's talk I would like to address is please monitor your analytics. If you are on the portal environment, each of you are plugged in with analytics, and we will give you, anything that you need as far as your numbers are concerned. You should have a view into your analytical data, but if you need any help with making sense of that data, our analytics Google expert Jenna Tollerson is right here, and she does an awesome job of making sense of what the data means, and I rely on her all the time. So monitor what's going, because that's what gives you the pulse of your website. The next is obviously, please don't ignore your mobile visitors. Be careful, and kind of whenever you're putting anything out there from a content perspective, if you are uploading something that's like a huge paragraph, or like a gigantic PDF. We're thinking that someone's going to be using a mobile device to, looking for this thing. Is this really mobile friendly? So, not that you need to be responsive to be able to kind of be really mobile friendly, but you can start out by just being aware of what is it that you're throwing out there. And take content seriously. Not that you're not, but when I mean seriously, it is have a strategy. What is it? And not what today's strategy is. What are you going to be doing with the content going forward? And last but not the least, I hope I have kind of convinced whoever was not that mobile is truly here, and we need to be ready. And we need to really kind of change ourselves to want to make sure that we cater to mobile, because that's what people are using. We can't change that. The best we can do is give them what they're looking for, because no more will and they'll come. We have to go and meet them where they are. Thank you. This was like a high level, so I don't know if anybody has any questions. There might be some questions that might be addressed in Christina's and Peter's talk. So if anyone has questions, do we have any time, Kendra? Okay, all right, cool. If anybody does have questions, just come seek me out in the hallway, or sit through Peter's and Christina's talk, and I'm hoping most of the questions are going to be answered today. Thanks.
We'll take about a 10-minute break and then come back here for the next talk.